He released a blistering letter late Monday to the head of the group, which says the current U.S. funding freeze is going to become permanent unless there are improvements in 30 days. The president says WHO consistently ignored credible reports of the virus in December 2019. But Newsweek has reported the CIA believes WHO is being strong-armed by China. The Chinese government is said to have threatened to cut off all disease data from the group if the WHO declared a global emergency.
Fox's Jill Nato. The stay-at-home orders extended by Oregon's Governor Kate Brown are back in force. The state's Supreme Court Monday evening issuing a stay of a lower court judge's ruling that the governor had exceeded her authority in continuing those restrictions beyond 28 days without first getting the approval of state lawmakers. America is listening to Fox News.
As we stand up to coronavirus by standing back with social distancing, Bank Pacific reminds you that you can come to the bank without going to the bank. Use many of our other delivery platforms like online banking at bankpacific.com, accessing cash at our ATMs, shopping with our debit cards. For businesses, we have secure cash and check drop windows, and we are employing a new smarter mobile app with remote deposit capture in the next few weeks. We're all in this together, and together we will win. Bank Pacific. For others but branches, we place roots. Member FDIC.
Mezcla Chamorro Fusion Bistro in Hacatlia and Tuman are now open for takeout and free delivery services in selected locations. For more information, call 479-2652 or 3 or 969-2652. Open Monday through Saturday from 11 a.m. to 2 p.m. and from 5 p.m. to 8 p.m. Mezcla Chamorro Fusion Bistro brings you island hospitality with the true taste of modern Chamorro cuisine at the comforts of your own home. They take your favorite local dishes and serve them with extra flair you will only find at Mezcla, a true taste of Guam.
The state of Texas moving to phase 2 of its reopening plans. Governor Greg Abbott.
Our focus is to keep you safe while also restoring your ability to get back to work, to open your businesses, to pay your bills, to put food on your tables.
Governor Abbott says child care facilities in Texas can open immediately with appropriate precautions. Bars and restaurants can open with larger capacities beginning on Friday. California is getting closer to its phase 2 reopenings.
Almost half of California's counties are now allowed to move deeper into phase 2 reopening, which means in-restaurant dining with restrictions. But California's Governor Gavin Newsom says many more counties, and more populated ones at that, may qualify. He hopes to make a statewide announcement soon.
That would allow for retail not just to be picked up, but in-store retail to be loosened up. In addition to that, sporting events, pro sports, in that first week or so of June without spectators.
He says this may be allowed if hospitalization rates and ICU stays continue to decline around the state. Jessica Rosenthal, Fox News.
The virus outbreak has led 3 states to cancel scheduled executions in the last 2 months. That string could come to an end Tuesday. Missouri is scheduled to lethally inject Walter Barton for the 1997 murder of a trailer park manager. His attorneys asking the U.S. Supreme Court to intervene. The United Nations Special Envoy for Syria calling for talks between Russia and the U.S. to help end a more than 9-year-long war in Syria. Russia is the key backer of Syria's President Bashar al-Assad, while the U.S. supports the opposition. A magnitude 5 earthquake in southwestern China has killed 4 people and injured at least 23. I'm Jack Callahan. This is Fox News.
Horizon Properties can empathize with individual property owners during this trying time. The last thing you should worry about is collecting rent or sending a repairman to your property. With their web-hosted property management system, Horizon can reach out to tenants, vendors, and owners alike and maintain the current prohibition requirements. Let Horizon Properties take care of it all. Help flatten the curve by remaining safe at home. Call 646-7616 or 777-7792 or visit horizonpropertiesguam.com. Horizon Properties, always there for you.
Cocoa Coffee Company mugs are now here. Show pride for your island as you enjoy your delicious Circle K coffee. Each generously sized 16-ounce mug is etched with Guam-inspired images like Chief Godao, Serena, 2 lovers, and many more. The Cocoa Coffee Company mug collection is available for a limited time only, so don't miss out. Get yours today and collect them all. Exclusively available at Circle K locations. A portion of the proceeds go toward the Cocoa Bird Recovery Program.
Hofade, this is Kayla from APL Guam. Here at APL, our expertise and extensive network can help you grow your business and reach out to more markets. As a responsible carrier, APL is also committed to a sustainable future, whether it's protecting the environment or investing our efforts in giving back to the community. Our dedicated team in Guam and the U.S. mainland are here to support you. Call 588-4651 or visit apl.com.
Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie is brought to you by Bank Pacific. Banking on the Pacific for 65 years. Portions of the show also brought to you by Security Title, making sure you actually own the property you think you just bought.
Welcome to Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie, the only show on talk radio where common sense is a lot more common. Phone lines are now open at 888-TALK. That's 888-8255. And now, The Point proudly brings you Tall Tales with Senator Bob Klitzkie.
Yeah, a well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state. A right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. Isn't that what you always say, Real Joe Cruz?
Every single day of my human life, sir.
Very good, Real Joe Cruz. I know I could count on you.
Yes, sir.
So that's how we start. That's how I start the program every day. It gives you a heads up. We're all about the Constitution, the Bill of Rights, individual freedom, a little bit of libertarian, a little bit of conservatism. Not too much on the left side of the ledger. Next item on the program will be Demi Akotny, but before I get to that, I have a question, Real Joe Cruz.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, any contact at all with the 19th floor?
That's strange you should ask. We've been getting some sporadic chatter on the wire lately, but nothing solid. And in the last at least 8 hours, there's been nothing on the line.
Nothing at all?
Nothing at all, just an eerie silence.
Silence from the 19th floor.
Yeah, almost like a ghost town.
Okay, Real Joe Cruz, let's go to Demi Akotny.
Yes, sir.
The 19th floor. Okay, let's go to Demi Akotny, Real Joe Cruz. Yeah, here we go again on the Demi Akotny Meet the Press. And as usual, the Daily News has decided not to meet the press today. They'd rather run some boilerplate from USA Today. Today, it's a piece by Dr. Judith G. Edersheim. And the title is, If Teens Won't Social Distance, Blame Their Brains. I could rephrase that. If the left won't social distance, blame their brains or absence thereof. That's about as much time as I'm going to spend on this boilerplate from USA Today. I have a substitute, though. I'm going to spend a little time with something that the other Governor, Leon Guerrero, submitted to the other newspaper yesterday, and the title is Administration Can't Defend the Undefendable. Now, I have my blue pencil here, and as usual, I'm going to use my editorial prerogatives to change the vocabulary where necessary. So I'm going to change this to Administration Can't Defend the Indefensible. Undefendable would be applicable for a building. You could say, we built our house with a wall around it, but if a determined group of bandits attacked us, the house would be undefendable. On the other hand, his argument bordered on the facetious, and even when examined in a light most favorable to the argument, it was indefensible. So given that blue pencil treatment, the administration can't defend the indefensible. And here it goes. The letter in Guam Daily Post on Sunday is another, quote, "thank me, I'm welcome" moment from the Leon Guerrero Tenorio administration. I understand why Jane Flores, one of the top media specialists in the Leon Guerrero Tenorio administration, even though she is not in a media role at the moment, stood up to defend the indefensible. Someone had to do it. And the current media team, of course, would be Janella and Crystal Paco San Augustine. Someone in the current media team still smarting over the Mutegate debacle isn't up to it. I say indefensible because in a democracy, taxpayer funds are meant to be used for the benefit of the many and not just a few politically connected insiders. I don't know if that's correct or not. Democracy means rule by the people. So if the people don't want to spend how the funds are used is up to the people. Democracy doesn't necessarily mean fiscal integrity. Going on, in Flores' letter to the Post, she states that someone needed to take care of the people in quarantine and asks the question, if not us, then who? Now, if she had asked me that question, I have a two-word answer right here on the tip of my tongue. National Guard. How about the 34 people laid off by the hotel who normally would have handled the housekeeping functions taken over by the very highly paid government employees? We saw that this what we're going to call shepherd duty was reserved only for people with really high salaries, directors and such. How about bringing back members of the laid-off hotel kitchen staff to provide travelers in quarantine 3 meals a day instead of awarding another illegal contract? Placing highly paid government employees into positions formerly held by low-paid service workers, displacing them from their regular jobs, cutting off the flow of the money to people who in the best of times struggle from paycheck to paycheck to make ends meet, is indefensible. The premise of Jane's argument becomes more indefensible when you consider the fact that the regular housekeeping kitchen employees have run out of money and food and are desperate, while highly paid government employees rack up extra hours, differential pay, and overtime, and possibly very soon, retroactive double-time pay. Having government employees working to provide services that were contracted to be provided by the hotel is also indefensible when you consider that it appears taxpayers are being double billed by hotels that have food, housekeeping, and laundry service in their contract, and then through additional contracts to other providers for the same services. Where does the money taxpayers are paying the hotel to provide services go? The appearance of corruption may or may not be accurate, but the administration's continued refusal to comply with existing laws and hiding transactions behind a veil of secrecy is also indefensible. Spending millions of dollars of taxpayer money meant to benefit the people of Guam without compensation, oversight, fund certification, or signed contracts is also indefensible. It smacks of the kind of abuse we were warned about more than 200 years ago when Thomas Jefferson said, quote, "So it should not be surprising if sometimes public officials do not heed the voice of the people and go about doing whatever they wish, using their power and authority to enrich themselves and those closely allied to them." End of quote. It will be interesting to see how many government officials consult with their attorneys before signing any of these contracts in the face of growing resentment and potential legal actions. The Leon Guerrero Tenorio administration campaigned that they will be, quote, the most transparent and accountable administration in the history of Guam. And they're right. They're the most transparent and accountable administration in the history of Guam since January of last year. You can't go any farther back than that, though. Evidence to date proves there is a huge difference. Actually, there is a huge difference between campaign promises and governing reality, and at the end, and that in and of itself is indefensible. Pretty well put, Ken. My sentiments exactly. Okay, so from there we go to the Post. And Post didn't do very well yesterday. I think the Post was kind of hoist with its own petard yesterday. It's not going to go very well today either. And here's the title of the Post editorial: Asking questions for the sake of accountability isn't hating. Now let's just stop for a second and talk about the word hating. And the word it comes from, hate. You know, for most of my life, I only use the word hate to describe my aversion to spinach and broccoli. I was a real George H.W. Bush man. I don't care what anybody says. I'm not going to eat my broccoli. Why not? I hate broccoli. And I don't care who knows it, even if it's politically incorrect. So that was about the extent, you know, during most of my whole life. You hardly ever heard the word hate used. And when it was used, it was kind of an over-exaggeration, and it meant dislike or don't favor, right? As an example, I hate Western movies, you know, which really means, you know, I'd rather watch a good musical or something that doesn't have John Wayne in it or something. It doesn't mean that you engage in that emotion known as hate, which is a pretty strong emotion and is occasionally reserved for other human beings, but not very often. You very seldom hear anybody say, I hate John Smith. It just doesn't happen very often because it doesn't happen. People don't say it very often because it doesn't happen very often. And, of course, as most of us grew up Christians, we were taught that hate is not a good thing. You should love your neighbor. You shouldn't hate your neighbor. So the word was very seldom used, and used in almost a slipshod manner until the uber left came along with hate crimes, hate speech. So now, if I were to say, and this is exactly how I feel, marriage means one man and one woman engaging in a civil or sacramental service, the fundamental object of which is for the raising of children, I would be told, yeah, hater's gonna hate. Or, that's hate speech. You can't say that here. That's hate speech. So the word hate is taken on a whole different dimension. And what it means now is something that I don't like very much. And because I don't like it, I'm going to demonize people who say things that advance what I don't like. I'm going to call it hate speech, and I'm going to call them haters. And every time someone comes along and is not politically correct, Real Joe Cruz, then you're going to hear this, yeah, sure, hater's going to hate.
Hater's going to hate.
Hater's going to hate, meaning if anyone comes along and says this use of the word they, the third person pronoun, in a singular sense is a moron. Yeah, sure. You don't want to use they? Haters gonna hate. That's hate speech. You can't say that around here. Somebody shut that guy up. That's where we are now, Real Joe Cruz.
Yes, sir.
Well, having gone through that little explanation, you're going to see why a really good editorial, what could have been a good editorial, was spoiled with one word. And here's the editorial. Something happened over the last few days involving the 3 hotels the governor's office chose to hire without following the proper procurement process and without signing contracts before services were provided. The one hotel that stood to benefit most financially, a transaction brokered by the governor's legal counsel and son-in-law, is out of the picture. The Pacific Star, which billed GovGuam at a rate of $544,000 every 2 weeks, or more than $2 million over the last 2 months, wasn't among the 2 hotels that now have contracts with the government of Guam as quarantine facilities for travelers. The Pacific Star and other vendors have been paid for their services prior to the contract signings, the governor said Monday. We've learned from previously released emails between government officials that instruments were given to pay the hotels by tapping into a GovGuam account that received federal funds. We also know that the proper process of hiring the hotels was skipped. It should have started with the Generalist Services Administration rather than the governor's legal counsel making verbal commitments. Actually, what they meant there is oral commitments. So it's not certain who authorized the electronic payments to the hotels without contracts. What we do know is there were no signed contracts for the purchase of hotel services between March and April prior to the services being rendered. We know this because Charles Esteves, Guam Office of Civil Defense Administrator, last week stated he won't sign on the Pacific Star contract and other contracts after the fact. He's not going to do it. He not only said no, he said hell no. His reluctance was based on the lack of General Service Agency involvement in the process of hiring the hotels and spending the money. If he signed the contracts and the process for spending public funds was disallowed, he could be personally liable for it, Esteves has said. We thank Esteves for his honesty and refusal to not just go with the flow. There was something about the hiring of the Pacific Star that wasn't right. Esteves trusted his instinct and followed the rules. The other change that transpired over the weekend was the pullout of dozens of highly paid cabinet-level officials from the job of hotel quarantine watchers or innkeepers, also called shepherds. Now, that shepherds came from Jane Florish's column that Ken L.G. had so much fun with. Also called shepherds by a former reporter turned administration member, thus gaining extra differential pay. The governor's office has stated the Guam National Guard will take over the task. It's not clear if the change of heart was because the governor's office was called out by tall tales, or if the governor's office finally came to its own resolution as a realization that the idea was unwise. Either way, the officials should now resume their respective tasks and not find another way to cash in the name of Wuhan virus pandemic. The governor on Monday afternoon said at a press conference that she used her emergency authority to hire the hotels. She also said there was nothing illegal about it. I'm going to contradict the governor here. There really wasn't anything legal about it. I went through it at some length. John Brown, a lawyer who is the procurement guru on the island, wrote a long column for the Daily News. And if you read that and listened to what I had to say, you'd conclude that the governor broke every law but gravity when she started hiring those rooms at the Pacific Star, including, Real Joe Cruz.
Yes, sir.
The 19th floor. Yeah. Okay. If that's the case, in other words, if there were no illegal contracts, why were the prior contracts with the hotels left unsigned? And why did the Civil Defense Administrator refuse to sign the contracts for services that had already been done? Quote, I had to work quickly, and I used the law provided to me and the authority given to me to procure the services, the governor said. They are services that were delivered, and we have an obligation to pay it, so we have paid it within the legal authority and are not in violation of the laws, rules, or any legal misdoing, the governor said. The only way for the truth to come out is for an impartial investigation to get underway, if it isn't already. The federal government should conduct an audit or investigation. We're also waiting for Public Auditor Benjamin Cruz to look into the hotel transactions. We, as working journalists, it's our job to hold our government accountable by asking questions. Questions the public is asking as well, and that's absolutely correct. If GovGuam officials have nothing to hide, all they need to do is simply provide the full documents and give answers when questions are asked. Now, if the Post had stopped right there, guess what, Real Joe Cruz?
What, sir?
I was right here ready with my blue pencil. But they didn't stop there. They had to add this. Inquiring isn't the same as hating. Now, why would they put that? Why would they spoil a good editorial with that? Has anyone said that the Post hates the governor? Has anyone accused anybody of being motivated by hate? I haven't heard it. I've heard a lot of people criticize the governor, but I haven't heard anyone come along and say, oh, you're just doing that because you hate the governor. So the word hate has no place in this debate whatsoever, unless the Post, occasionally gets tugged to the left and feels this overpowering desire to explain things in terms of hate and hating. So that ruined a good editorial right there. Inquiring isn't the same as hating. I knew that. Everybody knows that. So no blue star for you today, Guam Daily Post. And in the future, don't throw a straw man into your editorial at the very end, because that's exactly what you do. This whole hate thing is a straw man. So I was really disappointed when I read this morning. I thought, yeah, once again, the Post is right on top of it. Their editorials are doing just exactly what we expect from editorials. I was a little thrown off by the title of the editorial. Asking questions for the sake of accountability isn't hating. But we know that the headlines are not drawn up by the author of the editorial. And sometimes headlines don't properly reflect the content of the article for which the headline is attached. I just hate it when a newspaper does this, Real Joe Cruz. I hate it when they come up with a good editorial and then spoil it with a poor choice of words at the end. All right, well, let's take a short break here to allow me to recover.
The Extra Point with Jerry Roberts of Guam Training.
Hi, I'm Jerry Roberts, and every day on The Ray Gibson Show, I get to comment on the incredibly diverse, fun, challenging, sometimes frustrating, often exciting, but always interesting world of work. I hope you'll be there with us.
You can find daily transcripts of The Extra Point at guamtraining.com. Tune in every weekday morning at 7:20 for The Extra Point with Jerry Roberts, brought to you by Guahan Insurance Services and First Hawaiian Bank on 93.3 The Point.
Everyone has a busy schedule these days, and sometimes we forget to schedule our routine dental checkup and cleaning. Don't neglect your dental health. Schedule one today with Dr. Robert Yang and his Smile Team, conveniently located at the East West Business Center on Marine Drive, Upper Tumon. Call us today at 647-8702 or 3. Again, that's 647-8702 or 647-8703. We make smiles happen.
Talk Tales with Bob Klitzkie is brought to you by Mescla. Mescla Chamorro Bistro in Hagåtña and Tumon are now open for takeout and free delivery services in selected areas. Terms and conditions apply. Call Mescla in Hagåtña at 479-2652 or Tumon at 969-2652. Get your Mescla fix at the comfort of your own home.
We now return to Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie, soaring over the confusion with his superpowers of truth. Call 888-TALK. That's 888-8255.
So here we are, back again, and I noticed that there is a little action here concerning the 19th floor Real Joe Cruz.
Oh, really, sir?
I've got a post from James Howard. He says, Recon Team Delta. Judge Bob can confirm the 19th floor has gone silent, and we are currently tracking the carbon footprint of the leader. Codename RR.
Ah, interesting.
RR. Who could that be? Alice? No. Codename RR. Last seen at Domino's in Tamuning. The situation is fluid. Next update, 30 minutes. It's a good thing that James Howard's got Recon Team Delta out there working on this apparent silence from the 19th floor. And John Bagaforo pops up and says, so I say, I hate my haters. Is that hate speech? I hate my haters. Is that hate speech? Probably, yeah. Okay, so let's go to the card now. I got a lot of stuff on the card today. And I got a call on line one that I probably ought to dispose of before I plunge into the card. And let's see, I've got Ron McNinch. Good afternoon, Ron McNinch. How are you doing?
Hey, happy day, Cinder. Happy day, Guam. Yeah, Cinder, I was listening earlier about what you were talking about, the hate. I guess the way that the Guam Post used the word hate in the context of its editorial. To me, I think they might just be trying to connect to a generational audience, because a common colloquial statement that young people say is haters are going to hate and things like that. So that's how I would view that, the use of that particular word.
Did you hear what I said, Ron?
Oh yeah, I listened to your entire discussion on the Guam Post editorial.
Yeah. Okay. So let's take off from there.
Yeah. So I think that in general, one of the things I was just going to bring up is just how hard it is to report news here. I mean, it's really tough in a lot of ways because of all of the, we're an island community and we have like a lot of dynamics. So we have a lot of relationships with different people. So often reporting and asking tough questions can be a bit of a chore, unlike in a lot of other places in the U.S. mainland where people don't have these connections. And so I think that that's a little bit of the riddle also. But in general, I liked the editorial today. I thought that it was okay. But, I I think things can always be better, and that's certainly a point well taken.
Well, my point was it was a good editorial until they threw something in there that did not fit at all. And I don't know if the reason they threw it in was an attempt to engage in virtue signaling, inadvertence, excusable neglect, or whatever. But I'm usually pretty high on the Post editorials, but I was really disappointed when I got to the end of this one because that just didn't fit.
Yeah. Well, I think one sentence out of probably 40 or 50, yeah, I'd give them a break. But I would like to say one other quick thing. The intersectarianism and identity politics is really a big problem throughout the United States and also on Guam. And it's something that does need to, and the point that you made about how the word hate has been basically hijacked by people who have these intersectarian interests and these identity politics interests, I absolutely agree with. I think that just because I dislike something or someone, it doesn't mean that I dislike them because of their race or their sexual preference or their pretty much anything else. And so I think that that's a point that we should all be mindful of. That is, we can dislike things without being personal or engaging in identity politics with it.
Well, that was one of the things that I kind of pointed at, that perhaps the Post, which every once in a while drifts to the left, perhaps that's where they got this last sentence. Inquiring isn't the same as hating, because that's part and parcel of the whole identity politics game, that if you don't subscribe to the theories of identity politics, obviously you're a hater. Right. And I don't want to see that word used so loosely. If someone hates something, I want it to be the real thing. I don't want it to be some semantic ploy that's used to slam somebody because his views are politically incorrect. And that's one of the reasons I'm so hard on the Post today. And it's only one sentence, but when you're doing editorials, I'm going to use working with wood as an analogy. Sometimes the kind of writing that a person does is like carpentry. You got a saw and a hammer and nails, and you nail things together, and if it holds up and looks pretty decent, good job. But when you're writing an editorial, it's like cabinet work. Every joint has got to fit exactly right. Every surface has to be completely smooth. And there's just no room for carpentry in editorials. And this wasn't even carpentry. This was more like salvage work. Like they had that sentence left over and didn't know what to do with it. And they decided, well, we got to do something with it. Let's throw it into this editorial.
Well, I also agree with, I guess, your direct statement or inference about the term hate crimes. I don't believe there is such a thing as a hate crime. I think all crimes involve hatred and certainly criminal animus toward our society and toward individuals. And I'm always worried about, creating these pockets of severity. And I do believe also that our community should be aware that all crimes are really terrible. And in fact, there are aggravating circumstances and factors that make some crimes probably worse than others. And of course, that's part of the criminal justice system and process. But I think my problem with hate crimes is suddenly everything that anyone wants to label a hate crime becomes a hate crime. And that's not necessarily true, I don't believe. I think
it's another tool from the far left. It's another way to advance intersectionality and identity politics, because when we're talking about murder, premeditated taking of the life of another in the absence of excuse or defense, it doesn't matter if you hate the person or not. He's going to be dead.
Right. Absolutely.
And he's going to be dead regardless if he's killed by someone who hates him, or in the case of all too often, by someone who loves him, because of infidelity or something like that. By the way, I just committed a couple errors right there. I said, instead of using the word he, I didn't use the politically correct they for the third person singular, which is, part and parcel to this whole thing.
Well, I refuse to play that game at all. I think that, in terms of pronouns and everything else, I think that the far left have done themselves a very strong disservice by making a set of idiotic arguments on pronouns and claiming that there's 51 or 71 or however many ways to call themselves. If they can't make up their mind, they can't make up their mind. And I think that in general, it does people who have genuine concerns and genuine views on these issues, it does everyone who wants to help a disservice, because it lumps fairly centrist people into these far corners of these far left political types. And that's unfortunate, because I've always supported gay people. I've always supported persons who want to live their individual lives. I'm pretty libertarian on that. But I think that by these far left groups making the pronoun, basically the set of pronoun battles that they've made, they've done themselves a strong disservice.
Well,
unfortunate.
It's all part of the same phenomenon. I don't know if you've ever been tuned in when I go into my some of my discussions on the Frankfurt School and
right.
neo-Marxism, but that's where all this stuff comes from.
Political correctness is right out of Mao's Red Book. Also, that term is directly from Chinese communism, who derived it from Confucianism, which was a far more modest kind of political philosophy. But I think that in general, the whole idea of political correctness and having to claim that it's actually Orwell used it in Big Brother, or when he was talking about 1984, that language controls thought and thought controls a lot of other things. And so I think there's a lot more to these very important arguments and discussions, and I appreciate it that you always make these discussions in your daily radio show.
Okay, Ron. Well, thanks for calling in. It's always a pleasure talking to you, and I'll see if I can get the real Joe Cruz to take a break here if they are not too busy.
Okay, sounds great.
So
I always like the they Joe Cruz. Yeah.
All right.
Good. Thank you. All right, goodbye.
Yeah.
Wow, nice smile. So perfect and all.
Thanks. I owe it all to Dr. Robert Yang and his smile team. They do wonders for a healthy, happy mouth.
Got teeth? Don't wait until they hurt. Schedule your routine checkup and cleaning with Dr. Yang and his smile team. Suite 119 in the East West Business Center, Upper Tumon. Call 647-8702 or 3.
The best thing that happened to teeth since toothpaste.
Dr. Yang and his smile team.
They make smiles happen.
Cocoa Coffee Company is now available at Circle K. Single origin coffee beans carefully sourced and locally roasted to give you the freshest cup of coffee Guam has to offer. Grab a cup that's brewed every 30 minutes or purchase a bag of the locally roasted whole beans. Flavors now serving: light medium roasted Ethiopia and medium dark roasted Jamaican Blue Mountain. Exclusively available at Circle K. With every Cocoa Coffee Company purchase, a portion of the proceeds will go towards the Cocoa Recovery Program.
Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie is brought to you by Horizon Properties. Call 646-7616 or 777-7792. You can also visit them at horizonpropertiesguam.com.
So here we are, coming up here 15 minutes before the big halftime show that we have every day. And I'm going to tell you what's on the card. I've got Troy versus Janela. I've got Armed Robbers Lobby versus the end of the lockdown. Nature versus cynicism. Separatists versus the Treasury. Casanova versus Rule 8.406. I didn't know whether to call this Casanova or butterfly, but you can help me when I get to it. The governor versus denial, Romeo versus the media, and a few others that have been there for quite some time that I probably won't get to today. Oh, I've got Dr. Tom Poole on the line. All right. Good afternoon, Doc.
Good afternoon, Judge. I just wanted to call and underscore what Dr. McNinch was saying. You know, he's such a smart guy, really. I just gotten off work when I came out and I heard the voice on the radio and I knew it was him. And you've got to encourage him to call in more often. He always helps us. But I just absolutely agree with him. I've always been maddened by this whole hate crimes thing and how it's used for such sort of bizarre reasons. I can just completely agree with everything he said. I also wondered if you had seen some of the things that were in the news today, that some of these it seemed like it was mostly, Atlantic coast. Well, no, I'm sorry. One was in Los Angeles, where now you can go to the beach, but only on the wet sand. You're not allowed onto the dry sand. The dry sand is considered unsafe, but you're okay on the wet sand. And did you see the tennis court thing? That was back east somewhere. I forgot where that was, where they had, I think it was a mayor, and she was saying that singles tennis was okay, but doubles was out. And you had to have a tennis court in between. So you could play on this court, not the next one, and then play on the tennis court after that. So rather than 6 feet of safety, they've decided that it takes, I don't know what the width of a tennis court is, 60 feet, something like that.
Well, these tennis players, they, yeah, it's probably not enough. Go ahead, Tom.
Well, I just feel like science was the very first casualty of this whole thing. Back in January, science died a grisly death, and since then everybody's just been making it up as we go along. And as I've said to you before, I was sympathetic early when we didn't really know what this thing was going to be like. But gosh, we're way past that now. And at this late date, at the end of May, to be telling people that they have to alternate tennis courts, that's just madness.
Well,
anyway,
it was Abraham Lincoln who said something along the lines of, most any man can stand a great deal of adversity, but if you want to know the true character of a man, give him power.
I hadn't heard that one.
Yeah,
that's good. I love Lincoln's stuff. What a brilliant man.
And that's what we're seeing now. The petty tyrant inside a lot of folks has surfaced and is making itself well known.
Judge, thanks for letting me pitch in.
Anytime. Good talking to you, Tom.
Yes, sir. Bye now.
Okay, so, starting out, Troy versus Janela. And you remember Janela at a press conference a couple weeks ago muted some microphones so that members of the media weren't able to finish their questions. And she turned the microphones back on, but then told the reporters, you can't ask about that. Questions have to be limited to the subject of today's press conference. And, of course, the media folks didn't like it very much. A couple days later, the lieutenant governor said, that was wrong. I apologize. And Carlo Branch and Janela should apologize, too. And then Carlo Branch apologized, but Janela... Here we go, Real Joe Cruz. You know what Janela did, Real Joe Cruz?
No, it's not what she did. It's what she didn't do.
And she didn't apologize, right? Yeah. And she never did apologize. So Troy kept after the lieutenant governor. Hey, Lieutenant Governor, remember when you told Janela she should apologize? Well, after 13 days, Troy reports this. She won't be apologizing. Here's what Troy said. Carlo Branch has publicly stated that he directed Ms. Carrera's actions that day, and the lieutenant governor is satisfied that Branch has taken full responsibility. As the responsible party, the apology was solely his to make. It has been made abundantly clear that this situation will not be repeated. This came from Crystal Paco, also known as Crystal Paco San Augustine. Carlo Branch publicly stated that he directed Ms. Carrera's actions. So Ms. Carrera was only following orders. And that the lieutenant governor is satisfied that he has taken full responsibility. As the responsible party, the analogy was solely his to make. It has been made abundantly clear that this situation will not be repeated. And then Troy said he asked Tenorio's special assistant, Stephanie Flores, whether the lieutenant governor was mistaken when he held Ms. Carrera responsible along with Mr. Branch 13 days ago. She has not responded to the question. Paco's statement to Candid is in response to several questions we asked Tenorio Friday and again this morning, and there's a whole litany of questions there. So if what Crystal Paco San Augustine was correct, then it would have been for Carlo Branch to make that clear. He could have said, yes, what happened was wrong. I take full responsibility. I told Janella to mute the mics. I told Janella to cut off the reporters. But he never said that. He just said, and he got a three-point apology. It shouldn't have happened, shouldn't have done it, we're not going to do it again. So Janella's apology is kind of in a way similar to Commissar Linda DeNorcy's electronic signature. You know, there's a great deal of ambiguity, and the explanation for the ambiguity is ambiguous. That's kind of the way it came down. So I started a new countdown. What Troy put up, he put it up 3 days ago. So we have now gone 3 days where, at least as far as we know, Janella has not done anything that would cause Carlo Branch to apologize for her. So we'll keep that count up going, Real Joe Cruz. Today is day number 3.
Sure.
All right. Second item on the card, all of the people running around in masks. I made a comment when we first started doing this. Man, this is going to make it really easy for armed robbers. Because it used to be, you see someone running around with a mask, you think, hey, what's he going to do? Hold up a 7-Eleven? Hey, where's he going? To go in that gas station and hold him up? But now everybody can wear a mask and no one thinks anything of it. So my conspiracy theory is that the armed robbers have a lobby. And their lobbyists lobby with various local officials to require that everyone wear a mask, because this makes it easier for armed robbers to carry out their duties. Well, as usual, I'm right on point. Santa Ana, California is experiencing a surge in crime as suspects exploit a national recommendation to wear masks to prevent the spread of the Chinese coronavirus. The Santa Ana Police Department told CBS Los Angeles that the city has seen a 50% spike in robberies since California Governor Gavin Newsom announced a sweeping stay-at-home order in March. Speaking to the news outlet, one gas station clerk recounted how he was held up. Wow. What's the name of this outfit here? This is Breitbart.com. Hate speech, referring to this gasoline station attendant as he instead of they. All right. Speaking to the news outlet, one gasoline station clerk recounted how they was held up at gunpoint by a masked thief last Friday at 2 a.m. The clerk said the suspect didn't arouse suspicion because mask coverings are now the norm, allowing the thief to catch him off guard when he pulled a gun on him, took his cash before getting away. It's horrible, the clerk lamented. I mean, I know we have to take certain measures because of what's happening with Wuhan virus, but it's the perfect script or manual for a robber. The mask, the sunshade, and a hoodie. You don't know who's coming, who's walking in. In April, one thief using a bandana to cover his face robbed a donut shop on Bristol. The suspect emptied both registers before fleeing the scene. It's the norm, conceded Corporal Anthony Britannia. So we're seeing more and more suspects wearing the mask and using that to their benefit. So there you go. Did I call that one real, Joe Cruz?
You did, sir.
Yeah. So this armed robbers lobby is probably pretty strong. They've got a lot of loose cash at their disposal. Okay, next item on the card. This one will kind of warm your heart a little bit, real Joe Cruz. This is Nature versus Cynicism. And the title is New Baby, God's Opinion That Life Should Go On. And this is from the Post, and it's a column. The columnist says, my oldest daughter, Jane, just days away from her due date, had been feeling uncomfortable throughout the day. It was early evening where she was, and the feeling of discomfort had not gone away. My mother's sense told me something was up. This is Helen Middlebrook, columnist for the Post. And she goes on and she kind of gives us a play-by-play. And her last message, Helen's talking at 10:30 a.m. my time, she said she had called the midwife, that's her daughter, and she didn't answer my question. My next message, implying an imminent arrival, came from my son-in-law at 1:06 p.m., but I didn't see that until 1:35 when a picture of a full head of hair came pinging into my inbox. A 10-pound, 4-ounce boy. And here's the punchline here. This year has been so tainted by the news of death and disease that it's too easy to forget that we have much to hope for. Babies are a reminder of that hope. A baby, poet Carl Sandburg wrote, is God's opinion that life should go on. So a little bit of sentimentality here, a little out of character for Tall Tales, but it fits. Okay, let's take a break for that big halftime show that we have every day at 1700, and I'll be back in about 5 minutes.
The Point is KUSG, Hagåtña, Guam, 93.3 FM and 104.3 HD3.
The learning experience. I'm Jack Callahan, Fox News. President Trump says the coronavirus outbreak has been educational, telling a conference on opportunity zones at the White House Monday.
We've learned a lot. One of the things we've learned is be reliant on ourselves. Don't be reliant on other countries that, frankly, maybe have different agendas. And frankly, there are plenty of them out there.
And the president also made a surprising revelation about hydroxychloroquine. He is now taking it.
For about a week and a half.
Every day?
At some point, every day. I take a pill every day.
President Trump says he did consult with the White House physician before taking hydroxychloroquine and says he's taking it along with zinc. The president went on to say you'd be surprised at how many people are taking it, including frontline workers.
Fox's Trace Gallagher, there are conflicting but largely anecdotal reports on the efficacy of hydroxychloroquine against the coronavirus. The president also continuing the freeze on U.S. contributions to the World Health Organization for at least another month. But in a letter to the president of the WHO, he's warning he'll make those funding cuts permanent unless the organization makes several changes, including more transparency. Bowing to calls from most of its member states, the WHO agreed Monday to launch an independent investigation of how it managed the international response to the pandemic. The first potential coronavirus vaccine to be tested in humans showing promising results.
According to drug maker Moderna, whose vaccine appears to be safe and able to trigger immune responses in early testing. The findings, based on results from 8 healthy middle-aged volunteers, all of them generated antibodies similar to those found in people who've recovered from COVID-19, and those antibodies were able to stop the virus from replicating in a lab. Phase 2 of the study, led by the National Institutes of Health, is set to start soon, and a third phase is slated for July.
That's Fox's Lillian Wu. America is listening to Fox News.
During this time of great uncertainty, Security Title is working to support our essential banks. We are working for the family who would have been homeless if their purchase was delayed, for the families refinancing to lower mortgage payments, for the contractor who has fronted the cost to build a home, and the surveyors, appraisers, inspectors, and the realtors who cannot make a living without selling a house. With our office doors locked and our essential team members complying with all government protocols, in our own small way, Security Title continues to serve our community.
Horizon Properties can empathize with individual property owners during this trying time. The last thing you should worry about is collecting rent or sending a repairman to your property. With their web-hosted property management system, Horizon can reach out to tenants, vendors, and owners alike and maintain the current prohibition requirements. Let Horizon Properties take care of it all. Help flatten the curve by remaining safe at home. Call 646-7616 or 777-7792 or visit horizonpropertiesguam.com. Horizon Properties, always there for you.
He's free from prison, but a former Illinois governor cannot practice law any longer.
The Illinois Supreme Court's ruled former Governor Rod Blagojevich is no longer allowed to practice law after the Illinois Attorney Registration and Disciplinary Commission recommended the move. The commission said Blagojevich has not expressed any remorse after he tried to sell an appointment to the Senate seat vacated by President Obama. President Trump commuted the former governor's 14-year prison sentence after Blagojevich had served just 8 years. Since his release from prison, Blagojevich has earned money from a website where customers pay for personalized tributes from celebrities. Jill Nato, Fox News.
A Lebanese man has pleaded guilty in federal court in Minnesota to conspiring to export drone parts and technology from the U.S. to the Iranian-backed Hezbollah militia in Lebanon. Usama Homadi pleading guilty to conspiracy to illegally export goods and technology. His brother pleaded guilty back in March. The U.S. considers Hezbollah to be a terrorist organization. A Chinese mom sentenced Monday in the college admissions bribery scandal.
Xiaoning Sui was sentenced to time served in the Operation Varsity Blues roundup of parents and coaches using bribery to get their kids into top universities on fake athletic scholarships. Sui pleaded guilty earlier this year to paying $400,000 to scandal mastermind Rick Singer. Sui was arrested in Spain last year and spent more than 5 months in a Madrid jail awaiting extradition. According to court documents, both sides agreed that her time in jail is an appropriate punishment. Singer, along with Sui's other co-conspirators, have yet to be sentenced in the scandal. Gernal Scott, Fox News.
After a big day Monday on Wall Street, Asian markets closing Tuesday sharply higher. Dow futures are up about 150 points. I'm Jack Callahan. This is Fox News.
Mezcla Chamorro Fusion Bistro in Haggadah and Tucumán are now open for takeout and free delivery services in selected locations. For more information, call 479-2652 or 3 or 969-2652. Open Monday through Saturday from 11 a.m. to 2 p.m. and from 5 p.m. to 8 p.m. Mezcla Chamorro Fusion Bistro brings you island hospitality with the true taste of modern Chamorro cuisine at the comforts of your own home. They take your favorite local dishes and serve them with extra flair you will only find at Mezcla, a true taste of Guam.
Cocoa Coffee Company mugs are now here. Show pride for your island as you enjoy your delicious Circle K coffee. Each generously sized 16-ounce mug is etched with Guam-inspired images like Chief Gadao, Serena, Two Lovers, and many more. The Cocoa Coffee Company mug collection is available for a limited time only, so don't miss out. Get yours today and collect them all. Exclusively available at Circle K locations. A portion of the proceeds go toward the Cocoa Bird Recovery Program.
Half a day. This is Michelle from APL Guam. Here at APL, our expertise and extensive network can help you grow your business and reach out to more markets. As a responsible carrier, APL is also committed to a sustainable future, whether it's protecting the environment or investing our efforts in giving back to the community. Our dedicated teams in Guam and on the U.S. mainland are here to support you. Call 588-4651 or visit apl.com.
Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie is brought to you by Bank Pacific, banking on the Pacific for 65 years.
It gets better every day, Real Joe Cruz.
It does, sir.
Yeah, it sure does. Well, here we are back for the second half of Tall Tales. Got an interesting post here from Lynn McAfee. Talking about an ordinance passed in Dayton. The ordinance would make it illegal to wear a mask when committing a crime. Yeah, so I guess if you want to commit a crime, just don't wear a mask. It wouldn't be quite as bad. If you're wearing a mask and commit a crime, you better stand by.
Wow.
Yeah.
I'm scared now.
Yeah. So I think you can wear a mask but not commit a crime, and that's okay. And apparently you can commit a crime if you're not wearing a mask, and that would be okay. But I think we really need some definitive guidance from Commissar Linda DeNorsi on this as far as wearing a mask while you're committing a crime. Let's see, I got a long post here from somebody. I like the reference, Judge. Power and character reveals the true nature. Who they are, intentions, visions, beliefs, latitudes all lead to the same road, personal game. My question for you, Judge, is this. Now you have the power in Guam, Governor. What are the priorities of the administration, vision, long-term goals, and results? Well, unfortunately, I don't know who posted this. It'll show up in a minute. Oh, it's James Howard. Yeah, and it's a good question, James. And unfortunately, I think we know the answers to all of those questions. That the search, the seeking out of power was for power for its own sake. That's a conclusion that I'm about to draw. Okay, so back to the card. Separatists versus the Treasury. And this is an article that ran in the Daily News. The government of Guam's decision to take the so-called plebiscite case to the Supreme Court could cost local taxpayers an additional $144,000 in legal expenses to pay the attorneys, Rodrigo resident Arnold Dave Davis, who won the case. That would bring Davis' legal expenses in the nearly decade-long case to more than $1 million. $1 million. including more than 940,000 GovGuam already has been ordered to pay. Justices earlier this month issued an order denying GovGuam's request for a writ of certiorari in the 2011 federal lawsuit filed by Davis. That means a July 2019 federal appeals court ruling will stand, and Guam's native inhabitants cannot participate in the political status plebiscite mandated by local lawmakers. The federal courts have determined the voting eligibility for the plebiscite is illegally race-based. The non-binding election would have allowed, quote, native inhabitants, as defined by law, to state their preference for statehood, independence, or free association within the United States. Guam currently is a U.S. colony. Davis sued after the Guam Election Commission denied his registration for the plebiscite. Davis attorneys on Monday asked the U.S. District Court of Guam to order the payment of $144,034.90 in legal fees for their work on the Supreme Court case starting last October through last week. Now, Law and Order notebooks here, Real Joe Cruz. In what's called the American rule, the general rule is that each party pays for his own lawyer and there's no shifting of attorney's fees. That's the general rule. But if a litigant in the United States sues pursuant to 42 U.S.C. 1983 based on a denial of civil rights, and that plaintiff in that civil rights case prevails, then he's entitled to his attorney's fees. And the thinking here is that the way to enforce the various civil rights that people living in the United States are entitled to is to give those people themselves the ability to enforce those provisions of the Constitution and laws of the United States, which is what Davis did. Davis went down and wanted to register in the Chamorro Registry. Only people registered in the Chamorro Registry would be able to go to the polls if the so-called plebiscite were ever held. And Davis was told, no, you can't register because you ain't Chamorro. And that was the basis for his suit. And he won at the trial court before the district court, went to the Ninth Circuit. The Ninth Circuit reversed and remanded. A second, not a trial, but cross motions for summary judgment were held at the district court. Davis lost. As where Davis won, the government appealed to the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals, and the Ninth Circuit Court sustained the District Court of Guam. Now, I want you to remember that the judge of the district court is Francis Tidinko Gatewood. Now, this is so important to folks like Kelly Marsh, Titano, whose column I read yesterday talking in terms of self-determination, etc. So after the Ninth Circuit sustained the district court, I think the smart money was saying, you know, there's no possibility that the U.S. Supreme Court is going to grant certiorari on this case. And there are reasons that the Supreme Court grants certiorari, and I've been through them before. Most prevalent reason is that there's a division in the circuits. One circuit, on a particular question, one circuit rules one way, another circuit rules a different way. The Supreme Court will grant cert for both of those appellate court cases, bring them before the Supreme Court in the name of consistency, and if nothing else. But there was nothing in the Davis case that lent itself to the criteria that the Supreme Court usually looks for when it grants certiorari. And contrary to popular belief, the government of Guam didn't advance theories of colonialism or oppression or all of these other things that are so popular. The government of Guam tried to finesse it based on semantic arguments that didn't reach the heart of the arguments that the separatists constantly make. And the government of Guam lost. And when the government of Guam lost, who is going to pay the bill? Will it be the separatists or will it be everybody? That's another $1 million that we can't be spending on schools, the prison, all of the other things we need money for. It's gone because that money is down the drain for what I think I would have to conclude was a useless effort. However, it played well to the peanut gallery because it allowed the separatists to a little chest-pounding time and allowed them to say, Chamorro's never had the right of self-determination. We'll take this to court. We'll take this all the way to the Supreme Court. We don't care how much it costs the taxpayers. That's kind of went on. So the decision to take the appeal, that was Lulu's, our governor's decision, certainly pandered to the separatists amongst us who thought, yeah, that's good. We got to go to the Supreme Court on this. And the fact that we had a mainland law firm volunteer to do it pro bono didn't save us the fees that go to Davis's lawyers. And I want to make one thing very clear. None of this money, none of this $1 million goes into Davis's pocket. It all goes for attorney's fees for the lawyers that represented him in these cases. If Davis had a motive for doing this, I would have to say it's a matter of disinterested generosity. Davis was interested in the civil rights of people living on Guam and the idea that when we vote on something, everyone should get to vote and we don't make distinctions about who gets to vote based on race, which most of us thought we put behind us with the 15th Amendment right after the Civil War. Okay, another Joe, what can you tell me about the $144,000 more in attorney's fees?
Well, how are you doing?
Good.
Okay, so these are there's multiple issues, I would say. And before this, there was the issue of the spelling of Agana, the name spelling of Agana. And it's, that's not Chamorro enough. You have to spell it the way it sounds and this and that. And you know, there's some truth to it. I mean, my elders, you know, say, you pronounce it a certain way and this and that. But the fact of the matter is, the complete part of our history is that it was spelled A-G-A-N-A at one point in time. So why would you ignore that? It's like the ancient Egyptians who they had some falling out, or they didn't like one of the pharaohs, so the next pharaoh did his best to wipe out the memory of that pharaoh in the stoneworks. You know, why would you not include the complete history that it was once, you know, spelled either way? So it's like one of those issues that bewildered me, you know, because even in Canada you have two ways of spelling stuff: the English and the Anglo and the French way. And I just thought it isn't hurt anyone to use both. So then the next thing would be this plebiscite thing, right? If I was in charge, I would say, hey, this guy's been here on island for decades. He was married to a Chamarita. Yeah, why not make him I can't think of the word where you give like someone a doctorate, right? But they didn't actually study.
Honorary.
Honorary. Why don't you make him an honorary Chamorro? They have this Chamorro thing that that the legislature gives out or the governor gives out. It doesn't make sense. It's one individual person. It didn't make sense. It's a whole to do things. Like you said, I think it's just it gains attention, you know. So and look at all the money that we're spending. I just think that they could have gone about it in a smarter way. And I think if they had gotten the consultation of the elders who were around, I honestly don't think that a majority of the elders were consulted. And these are a bunch of younger generation activists. But having said that, you know, I could be wrong. If I'm wrong, let someone else chime in. Thanks for your time, Bob. Appreciate it.
Yeah, okay. Well, just a couple things, another Joe. Davis is not married to a chamarita, if that's important. It's probably important to his wife. Yeah. And the principle here, the separatists stand very firm on this. They don't want anybody voting in the quest for Chamorro's self-determination except Chamorros. Now, that's logical. If you have a question as to what it is that Chamorros prefer, then probably the only people you should ask are Chamorros. And when this came along, I've always said, I'd kind of like to know how Chamorros feel about self-determination myself. I'm not so sure I want to pay for it, being pretty Moschino. But there are lots of, a lot of different ways to ascertain that question. But there is a principle that evolved after the Civil War that's embodied in the 15th Amendment, which I just happen to have right in front of me. And here's what the 15th Amendment to the Constitution says. The right of citizens of the United States to vote shall not be denied or abridged by the United States or any state on account of race, color, or previous condition of servitude. Shall not be denied. So the proposition is that voting along racial lines, no matter how lofty the ideals of the proponents, is always wrong. We should never do that. Even if what we're doing is self-determination, which Raging Biscoe-Lee and Kelly Marsh is so important that they'll violate the rules of the legislature to go to the United Nations and make hate America speeches about it. But it doesn't change things. I mean, I suppose there are other arguments, but the argument that's been settled since the 15th Amendment passed was that voting cannot be restricted on the basis of race. And there are a couple of interesting points in the evolution of the Davis case, but that's what it really stands for. You can't restrict a vote on the island of Guam based on race. And it was $1 million lesson to our elders. And as I said, the separatists are, there's no compromise for the separatists. They only want Chamorros to determine the question of self-determination for Chamorros. And I can understand that. But yesterday, we talked a little bit about, can Guam be decolonized? Is the decolonization of Guam inconsistent with Chamorro self-determination? Guam is a colony of the United States, and let's say that in the process of decolonization, the United States and Guam, where that might be, agree that Guam should become a county of Hawaii. That way, we've got a couple of senators, we've got two representatives in Congress, we've got 4 electoral votes when it comes to voting for president. It seems like it satisfies all our problems. If Hawaii and the United States would go along with it, this wouldn't work for the separatists. No, because it's got to be Chamorros. It's got to be a government of Chamorros, by Chamorros, for Chamorros. And it's got to be on the island of Guam. And the rest of you guys, I don't know what you're going to do. That's That's your problem. It's not our problem. So that's kind of where we are. So we wasted $1 million here or more on this whole so-called plebiscite. And then the article goes on to say the Commission on Decolonization, which it's not. It's not a Commission on Decolonization. It's a Commission on Chamorro Independence. Last week said the island's pursuit of self-determination. The island is not pursuing self-determination, Guam Daily News, will continue, and Guam now has the option of taking the matter to the United Nations Court now that it has exhausted its legal options domestically. Oh, that's great. Now we can piss away some more money taking this to the United Nations Court. And one thing about the American court system, it has the power to issue remedies to people that live in the United States. The United Nations Court, I think the separatists have this mental image of going to the United Nations Court. Paper probably means the International Court of Justice in The Hague, prevailing, with we never had the right to self-determination argument. And the United Nations then lands a squad of powder blue tanks and soldiers in powder blue helmets with the letters UN on the front of them that will come in and take over the government and give the Chamorro self-determination. It's a really nice con, because what it allows is this whole Chamorro, or this so-called Decolonization Commission, it allows the separatists to draw a government check at the time that they're propagating their separatist propaganda. Okay, so we're right on, we're coming up to the 7th inning stretch, and I've got R. Carl on the line. So right after the 7th inning stretch, R. Carl.
The Extra Point with Jerry Roberts of Guam Training.
Hi, I'm Jerry Roberts, and every day on The Ray Gibson Show, I get to comment on the incredibly diverse, fun, challenging, sometimes frustrating, often exciting, but always interesting world of work. I hope you'll be there with us.
You can find daily transcripts of The Extra Point at guamtraining.com. Tune in every weekday morning at 7:20 for The Extra Point with Jerry Roberts, brought to you by Guahan Insurance Services and First Hawaiian Bank on 93.3 The Point.
As we stand up to coronavirus by standing back with social distancing, Bank Pacific reminds you that you can come to the bank without going to the bank. Use many of our other delivery platforms like online banking at bankpacific.com, accessing cash at our ATMs, shopping with our debit cards. For businesses, we have secure cash and check drop windows, and we are employing a new smarter mobile app with remote deposit capture in the next few weeks. We're all in this together, and together we will win. Bank Pacific. Brothers but branches, we place roots. Member FDIC.
Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie is brought to you by Horizon Properties. Call 646-7616 or 777-7792. You can also visit them at horizonpropertiesguam.com.
So here we are, 7th inning stretch, Wrigley Field in Chicago, empty ballpark, empty baseball field, but not an empty line, because we have our Carl on the line who's going to tell me a little bit about self-determination, I suspect, right, our Carl?
Try to toss in one or two thoughts. Yeah, I think my theory is that the obsession with confining the vote to people with Chamorro blood like me is that it's easier to influence 150,000, 60,000 people, rather than 160, 170,000 people for a vote. So confine the vote, and as much as possible, grow resentment toward America. And I think that's everything. That explains pretty much everything. Dave Davis, I don't think is important. I don't think the troop realignment is important. I don't think any of these issues that are brought up are really the purpose of it. The sole purpose of everything that is reframed every time there's an issue is to grow resentment toward America, with the idea of eventually having a vote and having people so angry, Chamorros so angry, that they will vote to separate from the United States. And technically, I mean, we did not have a plebiscite. There's no doubt about that. But we are a representative form of government. You know, the United States is a representative republic. Every time there's a major issue, they don't have a vote for every single U.S. citizen to cast a vote. And that would really be a dumb idea, because if there was a war that was potentially going on and the populace was enraged, pretty much 80, 90% of them would vote, let's blow those guys up. And so representative republic, I often looked on it as very inefficient, and it's kind of dumb. Why did the founders come up with this system of government? It's kind of, you know, slow. But really, as I got older and I began to read more and think about it, I began to realize how wise it was, because it slows down certain things, such as going to war. We sometimes still make the wrong choices, but at least the bureaucracy, the process, slows it down so we can have a little more thought, more debate, and increase the chances that we're not going to do something stupid. So we have a representative form of government, and you know, for 75 years, somewhere in that time span, we moved closer to the United States, and I don't recall seeing any major protests by Chamorros protesting that, no, we hate the United States. We got to get away from these horrible colonizers, these oppressors. There was none of that, and Chamorros knew how to protest. I remember seeing some photos of Chamorros with their protest signs after George Tweed came out with his book, his biography, his biographical account of his time on Guam. They were not happy with some of the things he said, and there were signs there. They were burning, I don't know what they were burning, effigies of George Tweed. But these were not passive people. If you upset Chamorros, they really know how to. They knew how to do a protest. But my mom's generation, my mom was here, and her siblings were here during the war. She never once expressed any outrage to me at being connected with the United States. They'd experienced being taken over by a violent, oppressive superpower in Japan, and they were not interested in that again. They wanted to be united with the most prosperous, the most powerful country in the world to protect against countries like that doing things like that. And we see things happening with China right now that are great cause for concern. That China is expanding its power throughout the world. They've got some kind of influence in over 70 countries. And, it's still a very dangerous world.
So getting back to self-determination, Carl, I think I was maybe 19 or 20 years old, and I woke up one morning and I said, I never had the opportunity to engage in self-determination. Was I deprived of something? I never got to decide, whether the whether the place I lived in would continue to be part of the United States, or perhaps the Republic of Bob. And the same. Same thing kind of goes now. Let's say that we had this great plebiscite, and it was finished. What about the kids that are born the day after? They're just SOL?
Yeah, I was thinking about that. You know, what about the person that happened to have the misfortune of arriving at 12:01 a.m. the date after? You know, they were allowing people to be included in on this, and this person, he or she or they or whoever, might have worked decades advancing the island, paying bills, voting, contributing to the island. My late Filipino wife worked she's the hardest working woman I ever met. She worked for almost 25 years. So if she was alive, she would have no right to have a voice despite all her contributions for those many years and all those tens of thousands of Filipinos and you know, many other ethnicities that are on the island. I can't support that. And I would be able to vote because I've got Chamorro blood, but you know, there's just too many people that have contributed too much to the island over decades, and I just can't see that. I can't see supporting that. And we have expressed, our elected representatives were expressing the will of the people by what they did. You know, the Organic Act and the other various things moving us closer to the United States. If we didn't like what they were doing, or our ancestors, there's free speech, there's freedom of assembly, there's a free press. There's all kinds of ways to express discontent or disagreement with our elected representatives. And other than, you know, a small, tiny amount of people, I don't see it. Maybe you can tell me if there was a historic record of some large group of Chamorros that were just absolutely outraged with our growing closer to the United States.
I think the only outrage that occurred was in 1950 when the Guam Congress felt like it wasn't given the opportunity to go closer to the United States. American citizenship and an Organic Act, if you remember your Guam history.
Yeah. Yeah, well, that's one of those, you know, one of those rare moments, and we were actually outraged because we weren't drawing closer. we didn't want to separate. We actually are, you know, my mom and her generation, the occupation generation, the war generation, they actually liked the idea of being united with the most powerful, prosperous nation on the face of the earth.
Right.
And it's only the younger generation that has been influenced by a lot of what is going on in public schools and especially on university campuses, the identity politics and the hate America messages that are constantly poured into students' minds. So I think that there's a conscious strategy in what is going on. They're playing the long game, the leadership in the separatist movement. They realize that the older generation, my mom's generation, my uncles and aunties, are dying off, the ones that have some loyalty to America. And the younger generation, they're in the public schools, the universities, and they're trying to influence their thinking that America's the great Satan and, you know, this is horrible. And they're giving this revisionist history.
You have to use the word oppression and oppressor when you're talking like that, Carl.
Yes, yeah, exactly. Yeah,
well,
so that's what's happening. They're playing the long game, and they see this as a strategy of the older generation dying off, the younger generation being growing the resentment in them toward America and straight white males, the white male patriarchy, and all this the other stuff. And with time, they see it. You know, they see their objective, and things like Dave Davis and each decision, I think that's why they pursue it over and over and over again, because each time the decision goes against them, which is pretty predictable, they can throw salt in the wound. You know, see, the United States is the great Satan. Look at how they treat us.
Yeah.
So Dave Davis is a tool. The troop relocation are tools. They're just a means to grow resentment toward America, and the ultimate eventual aim is separation from America, and as you pointed out, is to create a social justice utopia on Guam, which is what we see in the States, the cries for socialism. There's just no different here.
True enough, Carl.
Anyway, Bob, thank you for allowing me to toss in my 2 bits. I sure appreciate it. And the show's always interesting, as usual.
Okay, thank you, Carl. So I've got another Joe on the line, but I want to pick up on a post by Don Ed Kilani before I bring another Joe on board. And this is what Don Ed Kilani said. If self-identified, quote, Chamorros want to gather, assemble as a recognized ethnic nation, do they need to become a formal colony, parenthesis, like the Amish, in order to stay under the umbrella of USA national citizenship? If not a Native American tribe acknowledged by the Bureau of Indian Affairs? Well, let me try to answer that. You can self-identify, if you are Chamorros, you can self-identify however you want. And you can create an ethnic nation anywhere you want, so long as you don't disobey so long as you're in accordance with the laws of the United States. Nations exist outside of political boundaries or across political boundaries, etc. But that's pretty much an organizational detail left up to, quote, Chamorros. Do they need to become a formal colony like the Amish? Well, the Amish are not a colony. The Amish have a particular religion that they adhere to, and they're spread out all over the country. Maybe you're thinking of a Manna colony, which is a form of sort of a socialist type colony, but no different from anybody else. They form their organization. They comply with the laws of the United States. They're not entitled to any particular privileges that other citizens are not entitled to. And then finally, Native American tribe. Well, I've made this point so many times before, but Section 8, Article 1, Section 8 of the United States Constitution says that Congress shall have the power to regulate commerce with foreign nations and among the several states and with the Indian tribes, meaning that every Indian tribe that there ever will be had to have been in existence in 1789 when the Constitution was ratified. No new Indian tribes after 1789. Chamorros, as far as I know, were never a tribe. Certainly never an Indian tribe, and certainly not in 1789. So I keep hearing that all of the time, but it's a tree that bears no fruit. Okay, I've got another Joe on the line, but I've also I had Phil Flores on the line. Did he depart?
Yeah, I guess he couldn't wait. He didn't have any time to wait, I guess.
Oh, that's too bad. Phil, call back, because I'm going to put another Joe at the end of the line. I'm going to take our Fred first, and then I hope I'll take Phil Flores after that. Our Fred, good afternoon.
Hey, good afternoon. How you doing?
Good.
Well, I loved your talk on the decolonization and all that topic going on, and I was amazed that the next step is the UN, addressing the UN about this.
Well, is that
true?
That's what the Commission on Decolonization says, yeah.
And for the Chamorro only vote?
Uh-huh.
I mean, we're still on that? I thought, like you said, I thought we discussed this during the Civil War, that we can't have any racial type of votes.
One would have thought so.
How can we still, like you said, we're just wasting more money, and if there's going to be a task force or commission, I want to be on it because I want that first-class travel to the UN.
Yeah, and there's some really nice hotels in New York, too. I don't think that when those guys travel, they stay in Motel 6.
Yeah, I'm all for this tomorrow-only vote if I get to be on the commission and enjoy the perks of the commission.
Okay, Fred.
I bet you would too. But I can't believe that we're still going for this native-only vote when it's so outright racial. And in this day and age, how can we have a one-race vote and discriminate against others when Guam is such a melting pot of so many races, and so many races are benefited from the being under the U.S. flag and all the benefits that we get from it? How can we still ask for a tomorrow-only vote? All the investors and foreigners that come here and make Guam their home, it's because of the rights and the privileges from the U.S. So, like you said earlier, we're just wasting more money to continue this fight. More travel, a task force commission, travel to the UN. How many people will travel from Guam, waste more money, just to get shot down again and be like, you can't have that vote, that only vote. If anything, we should fight for just voting for the president of the U.S. That's what we should actually go for. Our congressman is there, and that's the fight we should go for.
I got you, Fred.
All right.
I got a break coming up. Thanks for calling, our Fred. That was our Fred.
Everyone has a busy schedule these days, and sometimes we forget to schedule our routine dental checkup and cleaning. Don't neglect your dental health. Schedule one today with Dr. Robert Yang and his Smile Team, conveniently located at the East West Business Center on Marine Drive, Upper Tumon. Call us today at 647-8702 or 3. Again, that's 647-8702 or 647-8703. We make smiles happen.
Cocoa Coffee Company is now available at Circle K. Single origin coffee beans carefully sourced and locally roasted to give you the freshest cup of coffee Guam has to offer. Grab a cup that's brewed every 30 minutes or purchase a bag of the locally roasted whole beans. Flavors now serving: light medium roasted Ethiopia and medium dark roasted Jamaican Blue Mountain. Exclusively available at Circle K. With every Cocoa Coffee Company purchase, a portion of the proceeds will go towards the Cocoa Recovery Program.
Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie is brought to you by Bank Pacific, banking on the Pacific for 65 years.
Well, here we are, Louisville, Kentucky, Churchill Downs, and although the stands are empty, I have a set of binoculars here that I brought just in case I was going to watch the race, and I spotted in the distance Philip Flores. So here we are, Phil, in Louisville, Kentucky.
I've never been to the races, but I remember when I was in college, we'd go to Hollywood Park to catch the 9th race of the day. You'd get them for free. We'd grab somebody's racing forms that was in a garbage can and go in there and bet. And I can remember a couple of times it came up, "Are you 21? "Oh, yeah, I'm 21. And I'd run like the lightning. But anyway, I did call up earlier, and I hung up. I did the opposite of a butt call. And I'm just thinking about the whole thing about the self-determination and that conversation that you've been having for the last half an hour. And we've already chosen what we want to do. I always, when people talk to me about this, and by the way, when the other Joe was talking about, people, younger generation doing this, it's always been the younger generation that is more thinking, because I remember a long time ago, I was a younger generation person. But anyway, in my mind, we've already chosen our status, witnessed by the number of people who have gone and joined the service, the number of people who are living in Las Vegas, Fairfield, Washington State, Washington, D.C. area. We're Americans, and it kind of hurts me because I'm such a proud American, that someone says, my country is not good enough for you, if my government's not good enough for you, the federal government, what other government in the world do you want? Do you want to be socialist like Bernie Sanders and AOC? Do you want to be Cuba, or even a more benevolent government like France or Italy or whatever that has huge problems because they can't afford the socialism? But I love my country, and when I hear people say that we're a colony, we are not a colony. There's plenty of places you can go around the world and be in a colony. Guam is not one of them. Guam is America. I love Guam. And anyway, that's my spiel for this evening.
Well put, Philip. I'm really glad we got you online to say that. I couldn't agree more. Thank you very much.
Okay, amigos. Talk to you soon.
So long. Okay, well, Philip Flores lays it out for us. And another Joe, you want to ride on the Ferris wheel again?
Yes, sir.
All right, go for it.
Okay. So what can I say except that it seems very often that we're in changing times, and we don't know what the next political correct opinion is going to be, and we're going to be like more or less forced or pressured to adhere to. For example, oh, you can't say Merry Christmas. You're supposed to say Happy Holidays or something like that. Where you grew up used to saying Merry Christmas to everyone, and it's a Christmas season and sort of thing. So and then it's all in the name of tolerance, and then it becomes this version of tolerance and that version of tolerance. And I used to watch this Survivor thing, and I started thinking, man, it's so vicious, and it doesn't make sense. It's not based on any particular morals, ethics. It's really based on who has the upper hand, and it's perceived, and the strong get attacked by the group, right? Because everyone knows that the winner gets the $1 million or however many millions they get. So it starts to feel more and more like that another episode of Survivor, where we don't know what the prevailing political correct opinion is going to be next, and we're just waiting to adapt to it. So although I want very much to agree with your perspective a lot, Uncle Bob, and with elders and who tend to want to be reasonable, I can't say for sure that that's going to be the case. I just have to wait and see what I'm going to have to adapt to next. But I think for me, what I have identified with the most, and I try to adhere to, is I think of myself as Christian. So I would think, okay, if I'm as a Christian, how would I want to approach this? And I like to believe the majority of American identity or influence was that of a majority Christian population, but that's just my interpretation and my opinion. So having said that, it seems as though we're waiting to see, sometimes holding our breath. What's the next dominant, prevailing political correct opinion? Anyway, so thanks for your time, Uncle Bob, and we'll see.
Okay, another Joe. Good talking to you. And now I've got Jim Mansfield on the line. Good afternoon, Jim.
Good afternoon. Guam is supposed to be a democracy. Then how come the patients do not have any rights to arbitrate or mediate if they have problems at the hospitals here, if it's supposed to be a democracy?
Well, Jim, I think we start answering that question by defining democracy. Democracy is two Greek words. Demo means people, cracy means government by. So democracy is a government by the people. We have a democracy here. We elect our legislature, we elect our governor, etc. So what am I missing here?
Okay, well, the arbitration laws do not represent the people here. They represent the health industry and doctors. And so the patients have no right to arbitrate because of the cost of arbitration and the cost of mediation, which is not practical for most people.
Okay, but I hear what you're saying, but that really doesn't have a whole lot to do with democracy, because our law concerning medical malpractice arbitration was adopted by our democratically elected government. So
yes, it was.
So
and if we go deeper into that, there's also lobbyists that pay for this, pay for the senators and pay for their campaigns for their certain issues and certain things that they want to see passed.
What, does that take us out of the realm of democracy?
It does, because the democracy that we talk about should be equal and fair. And if you have these laws that are stacked up against, common folk, do you really call this a democracy?
Yeah, I do, and I think you're reading a lot more into. I'm being a little bit semantic specific here, but I think you're reading a lot more into the word democracy than what the actual word will bear. Democracy means government by the people. Now, sometimes the people decide on passing laws that some of the people don't like very much. And part of democracy in a society like ours is that people will urge the democracy, the lawmaking bodies, to pass various laws that favor them and don't favor others. But that doesn't mean it's not a democracy.
Well, for a lot of people, it doesn't seem like a democracy here. And you have to go back to even the Boston Tea Party, where it didn't favor the people, and you see what they did, and you see how they stopped the taxes from the British. So, whatever it takes.
The Boston Tea Party, that was dealt with taxes, and it wasn't. There was no pretense towards democracy. It was basically the colonial government was a function of Britain. So I don't see the parallel.
Okay, look at the parallel for this.
Yeah.
The oppression of these laws. They're oppressing the people. The people are suffering because of these laws. Okay, lives and families are suffering because of this ability to not be able to pursue any malpractice here on Guam.
Well, I think perhaps people who have been the victims of medical malpractice are suffering, but I don't think it's a general island-wide suffering, Jim.
Well, it could be, because it could happen to anybody, and each and every day you're risking your life every time you go to the hospital.
Well, I think, if I could ever so politely suggest, if you don't like the medical malpractice law, then maybe that should be your target. But I see throwing the word democracy into the mix really doesn't help you advance your argument.
Well, I see your point, but I would consider this undemocratic overall, because if you can tell me another state or another commonwealth or territory that has this, then I would be in agreement with you.
Well, I can't do it today, Jim, because we're right up at the end of the program, but call back tomorrow. We'll talk about it tomorrow, okay?
All right.
Thank you. So there we are, Jim Mansfield, closing out Tall Tales for another day. So we'll see you tomorrow.